everybody, Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's doing well and having a good start to the weekend. Would have had this video up on Friday, but I'll be honest with you, I was feeling like absolute junk. And through a pretty good chunk of the day, I've been feeling like junk. This is really the best I've felt in the last 48 hours. So apologies for the inconsistency on the videos here. I don't know what this bug is that I got going on here, but I'm struggling to shake it off. But I'm trying to keep things rolling here. I know there's a lot of weather to talk about right now and in the days ahead, but we are going to talk about the rest of the weekend ahead. Well, hopefully, if we can beat off whatever this is that's bothering me or ailing me, we can talk more tomorrow about these setups for Monday and Tuesday, and then beyond that point. Even so, if you're still here, appreciate you. You would also, of course, hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you're new around here, and also hitting that share button. Because like I said, it's going to be very active in the days ahead here. Storm system after storm system is coming. And while right now we only have severe threats up to day 4 at this point, don't be surprised if somewhere towards maybe the end of next week we might see another one. It's still uncertain right now, but it's something to keep an eye on. That being said, we even have an update or an upgrade to slight risk today. It's a very small corridor where we have the threat for damaging winds and tornadoes, although it looks like the threat is now starting to shift more towards damaging winds. We did actually have a tornado warning earlier over towards this area, and from the radar signature, from what I saw, it looked like it was a tornado in progress, possibly. Don't know if that's for sure, but if that's completely true or not, but it's just something to keep an eye out for if you're over towards southeast Florida for the rest of the day. And then even if you go over towards, or southwest Florida, I should say, excuse me. And even as you go towards the eastern half of the Florida Peninsula, just keep an eye out. There's just going to be that little offshot of maybe 1 or 2 storms doing a little something there. As we go towards Sunday here, of course, this day is going to be a lot calmer as far as severe weather is concerned. And another thing to make note of is the winter weather is kind of downtrended a little bit. The threat for snow is still there. There's still actually areas where we could be seeing 1 to 2 inch per hour rain snowfall bands, but it's definitely not what is definitely may not be as large in scale, but the impact still will be notable, to say the least. And of course, our elephant in the room, our day 3. We will get into this a little bit today, but we're not going to get too heavily into the parameters here. That's really going to be for tomorrow's video, because then we'll probably be in range of the day 4, which will then become day 3, and then so on and so forth. But that being said, let's go ahead and actually get into the model data here. Since we're within range of the NAM 3 kilometer, we're going to go with that. I always tend to prefer looking at convective models. They're a little bit more accurate, maybe not always down to a T, but usually you get a much better look at things than what you would on some of the medium range models. For the most part, there are some things that the medium range models will always pick up well all the way up until the anticipated day. But that being said, one thing to make note of here is the trough that we had here. It's still there, but it's not as impressive as it once was. The low is all the way up here, which was anticipated, but what I did anticipate or didn't anticipate was it not looking as impressive as it once did. I was anticipating this contour line to be a little bit tighter or a little bit more organized, a little bit stronger, and we aren't really seeing that. So as we continue to move this forward, it just continues to kind of fall off here. It starts to deepen again as we go later into the evening. So this one, I think, an opportunity for heavier snow will also continue as we continue to push off to the north and east here. Meanwhile, high winds are going to be a thing across the backside of this system here, heading into the southeast and then the mid-Atlantic, eventually even the northeast. So along with the cool down, there's going to be some pretty brittle or pretty cold temperatures here. So just make sure you're insulated, make sure you have that heat on tonight. Definitely don't want to get caught off guard like that, or you might end up like me. But that being said here, this is getting into mid-Sunday morning here and into the afternoon. We do start to warm back up, but ultimately this ridging is going to be a result of this next system that we have going on here. And this system is looking very potent. Every model that I've looked at with this storm system has looked really impressive so far. And this has been taking a little bit more of a negative tilt here. Keep in mind, I've been mainly looking at the GFS and the Euro, so seeing the name, it's a little bit different for me, but regardless of that, the fact of the matter is the area hasn't really changed too much. I've taken more interest in particular, though, if anything, maybe towards eastern Texas and southern or south central Louisiana, maybe even north central, for maybe the threat of a few tornadoes. That could be possible as well. So that's going to be another thing to watch very closely there. And then as we continue to drag this forward here, we see the setup coming into play here eventually for parts further to the east, such as South Alabama, South Georgia, and of course Florida. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the next model here. So now we're changing to a different level of the atmosphere. This is looking at the mid levels directly. We're really more so just kind of looking ahead for the severe weather threat at this point now. While there is going to be a wintry weather threat with the next system here, we do have to also consider the wintry side of this, which we will a little bit later in the video. But from what we see right now, it looks like even towards the mid levels, we get a nice little short wave that's going to pop up right around 22Z. So right around mid-afternoon is going to be a point of interest. And like I said, the thing with this setup is kinematically, this thing is insane. It's really all going to be dependent on the thermodynamics, which are there. The dew points are there. The instability will be there. And then also the lifting mechanism, because when you have a low like this, it's negatively tilted. You usually can get a little bit of everything going here with relative ease when you have the forcing like this. My concern is the threat for discrete supercells. That's really what I'm trying to hash out here at this point. But seeing figures like this is pretty crazy here. So I think we're likely, as of right now at least, to see line segments and maybe a few embedded supercells within those line segments. A few discrete supercells are possible. We could see all modes really possible at this point, just from looking at the model data I'm seeing here. And then, of course, looking at the lower level of the atmosphere, the low-level jet, this is a key ingredient to tornado genesis. We have some pretty high values and also very good directional shear as we go through the day on Monday here. So, like I said, the further east we go here, towards Louisiana in particular, maybe even towards New Orleans, that's where my concern really starts to ramp up here for the tornado threat. I think midday and beyond, we might have some real trouble on our hands if this verifies. And I keep saying if this verifies because we know the weather loves to do little last minute changes here. There's always environmental parameters that often either aren't seen, aren't mentioned, or sometimes overlooked by some, and then others are able to pick up on it more easily. But that being said here, fact in the matter is there's still fail parameters. This is not a shoe-in tornado outbreak. So you have to keep this kind of open-ended all the way up until the end. But like I said, a lot of kinematic energy, a lot of wind energy with this system here as a whole. So definitely something that I'm going to be watching, of course. We'll have another video, of course, by tomorrow. It's going to be a much more thorough one, kind of talking about the potential with this setup here. So that being said, looking at the country as a whole here on the temperature side of things, this is looking at everybody. I mean, it's no real surprise that with the setup that we have now, cold air is going to be reigning supreme. So as we go through Sunday here, you can see just how much that cold air is prevalent, especially towards the western half of the U.S. here. It's looking like a negative PNA setup where it's cooler out west, slightly warmer out east, but not by much. It's not going to be a dramatic difference here. We do get some warming throughout the day Sunday for a large part of the central part of the U.S. here. But a lot of that cold air that's stored out west as we get towards Monday is going to eventually start to work its way eastward out and then also be sneaking in behind this system. So you have a nice little contrast here where we're getting into those 70s, and then behind that front, we're going to start to see some 50s coming into play right after that. And then the temperature will just gradually be dropping from that point. Anywhere else, really, you're chilly and you're likely to just stay chilly. Could be some warm air vecting out ahead of this cold front here for areas off to, let's say, the southeast. Probably mostly going to be south of Atlanta here, and probably south of Birmingham as well. But nonetheless, though, we may see a little bit of shower and storm activity that far north as well. But the real question will be after that point, just what happens with that leftover moisture. If we can get enough leftover moisture and a slight change in the track, could even see some wintry precipitation. But I think for the most part, we're dealing with mostly an Ohio Valley wintry system at this point, and maybe a nor'easter. Extra emphasis on the word maybe. All right, so this is us looking at our dew points for right now, and we can see very rich figures over here over towards southern Florida peninsula here. Not a surprise at all. Of course, as we go through Sunday, this clears out, but only to be recycled almost. New moisture return comes in by Monday evening, and lo and behold, right in that area that I'm talking about, we're getting those dew points into the upper 60s, maybe even a few 70s could be possible there as well. And then, of course, we're going to watch this eventually transition off to the east here. We'll get a better look at what's ahead for this part, because we got to remember eastern Texas is in this threat as well. So we'll also get to see just at what time that moisture return really starts to kick in here. You kind of see it a little bit on Monday morning, but it really doesn't ramp up until, I would say, the early afternoon. You can almost see the look of a dry line trying to develop here. Really strong contrast right here. We're getting into the mid 60s on dew points in this location. Then once you get behind the front, got 40s here, and then a little further back there are those 30s. So like I said, I think lift is not going to be too much of an issue with this one. Plenty of large scale ascent here seems likely. So certain parameters like EML are going to be a key factor in what kind of storm mode we end up getting. I don't really see too much in the way of that right now. I'm going to, of course, mention that a little bit further in tomorrow's video. But like I said, you can see the moisture nose right here into southern Mississippi in the overnight hours, which does lead me to have a little bit of concern for an overnight severe threat as well. I do think that this could be an all-day type of thing, so I may only get to stream a piece of it, considering the fact that I'm probably going to be at work. But I'll try to get home as quickly as I can. But that being said here, let's go on and take a look at another big issue we're going to have in the days ahead, and that's going to be wind gusts, especially for the areas that are going to be pretty cold here. This could be insult to injury in a way, because with this, it's going to reduce the wind chill. So colder wind chills mean it's not going to feel pleasant. It's going to feel even colder than what it already is, for those of you that don't know. Pretty sure a lot of you have already experienced this once in life. But that being said here, with this current storm system that's rolling out, we're already going to start to see the winds increase across the deep south here. The Midwest here is even seeing 20-mile-per-hour gusts here. And as time goes on, even through Sunday, through early morning, we could even see a few areas getting up into those 30-mile-per-hour ranges. Up towards the mountains, especially the Appalachians and the Mid-Atlantic, we could probably even see a few wind advisories possible there as well. And then here comes our next storm system, and this one is going to be a beast. Even if we don't see severe weather from this, the amount of high winds that we're likely to see, I wouldn't be surprised to see a few wind warnings with this as well. Seeing these 50, potentially 60+ mile-per-hour gusts here towards southwestern Texas is going to be crazy. Of course, that's coming off the mountain, but still, the fact that we're dealing with that far out to the east at this point is a statement of just how intense this system may very well be. As we continue to move forward here, damaging wind potential is already high, and because usually you don't see this indicator this quickly unless you just have a really strong area low pressure like what we have here. So this is very much a concern. There could literally be damage reports from non-thunderstorm winds, which is absolutely insane to think about. And then as we continue to move forward, those winds are going to be ever prevalent over the next few days here. So like I said, brace yourselves. This is going to be a big system. Regardless of what it produces with severe weather, the fact that we're going to be dealing with winds this strong from non-thunderstorms, just from this system itself, is going to be wild. So make sure that you're prepared. Maybe if anything isn't tied down and you know the storm system's heading your way, maybe like if you have anything outside, definitely would consider bringing that inside so that way it doesn't go flying around and damaging someone else's property or yours. That being said, we'll take a quick look at the instability that we have available here, and then we'll kind of go on from that point. Of course, we're looking at Florida right now. Rather impressive instability for this time of year. During the wintertime, you don't really see super high Cape values, but if you can get up to that 1,000+ joule per kilogram range, like what we're seeing here, it definitely shows that there is a decent threshold for severe weather. Now, when we go towards Monday's setup, expect some moderately impressive numbers here. Could even see up to 2,000 joules per kilogram in some areas, possibly. Like I said, it's going to be right up against the coastline, really, where those highest Cape values are. So this is earlier in the day, mainly towards Texas. 2,000 joules per kilogram, not really surprising to see that off the eastern coast here, and the western Gulf Coast here. But like I said, it's really, when you look at these soundings here, seeing these steep lapse rates is where I'm very concerned about all hazards being possible. Everything looks like it's pretty impressive at this point. Mixed-layer Cape's really high at over 2,000. Even the surface Cape's really high. Downward Cape or downdraft Cape is at 1,036. So that shows potential for damaging winds. And then of course that those surface or 0 to 1 kilometer winds here, really looking ominous here. This is one of the more impressive soundings that I've seen from this setup here. Does look like the storm mode could be a little bit messy here, but the fact that we still have that 0 to 1 shear looking really strong leaves me very worried about the threat for tornadoes, and the potential for a strong one could be in the equation here. In fact, it's kind of indicated here even on the effective layer significant tornado parameter. So like I said, a lot to really keep track of here. So we could be on the verge of doing some 2 video a day type deals. I'm going to try my best to push through whatever this is and get going. So that being said, as we continue to go throughout the evening even, we still have some very impressive Cape. So like I said, an overnight threat seems very likely. And this is not far from New Orleans right here. Seeing this sounding is very concerning as well. The 0 to 1 kilometer shear, seeing it go almost vertically up the y-axis like that is usually not a good sign. One thing that could save this, if this scenario plays out here, could be the fact that the moisture kind of bows out like that. Maybe a little bit of dry air could be inflicting its way into the surface here. If that ends up being the case, it could be a saving grace. It may not be. But the fact that we have parameters like this is very concerning. So, like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see what lies ahead here. I do also see some really strong capping here going on, so maybe at the surface this scenario may not play out, but if somehow the surface improves or destabilizes a bit here, we could have a big problem on our hands even into the overnight. So like I said, really just gonna have to play this by ear and see what happens with this. So the next things that we're gonna look at here, we're going to be, of course, looking at the precip for everybody, and then we're going to be taking a look at the snowfall totals, also the rain totals over the next few days. So, of course, we know what's going on over towards the northeast right now. Snow is going to be a big thing. Some leftover shower storm activity, of course, towards the mid-Atlantic, especially where the warm air is prevailing. As time goes on, we'll continue to see that precip become a little bit more prevalent, and we may actually still go ahead and stream, probably going to be more so into the evening hours, maybe the overnight over here, probably for a little bit at least. And we'll probably see at least a little bit of significant snow over here for New York City, for Boston, Philly, and others, and other areas as well as the storm system moves out. But also look at what happens right here. It's a little bit of moisture pulled off from the from what looks like the Great Lakes here, and it gets caught up in this cold air, and it'll help keep that snow going into the afternoon hours for some. And then lake effect snow also looks like it's going to be a thing, so some significant banding could even be possible over towards northwestern Pennsylvania, I should say, and parts of Ohio as well. And then after that, here's our next storm system. Further up north, we could still see some pretty big time snow, And with the wind energy being the way that it is, a blizzard is not off the cards by any stretch. So here we are going into the time frame where severe weather comes into play. You can see that frontal boundary right here easily just based off the way these storms are formed here. I'll circle that for you. Right here is where we'll see that boundary. But I'm really concerned about the areas out ahead of it. I'm concerned about, particularly, like I said before, this region here, where if we can get that low level jet to really ramp up, which it looks like I don't really see any reason why it couldn't, we could get a few tornadoes there as well. Hail also will be a threat further off towards the west. And as time continues to roll forward here, see this messy storm mode kind of coming into play here, and then eventually that main line kicks in, which wouldn't surprise me if there were a few embedded supercells in there with tornado potential as well. So like I said, a lot to keep track of, a lot to keep a close eye on. If we lose that surface inhibition there too, we could have a problem on our hands. But yeah, instability looks very much rich and very much available across this part of the region here heading into Monday, and then into Tuesday here. It could potentially even be a similar situation over towards South Georgia, South Alabama, and most of Florida. So just be on the lookout because we're going to be very busy here. So as far as rainfall is concerned, it's no surprise here over towards the Gulf Coast states is going to be where we have the most significant amounts, maybe even 3 to 4 inches. That tends to happen with severe weather threats, so not really surprising. And there's going to also be leftover moisture behind the severe storms as well. Usually what will happen with these lines, they'll start to expand as they start to weaken, and usually you'll have a nice little period where you have a downpour of rain. So a lot of us kind of know what's going on there. Of course, the wintry side of things, mainly going to be looking around this area. A little further to the south here, up to an inch of rain possible here, not surprising at all. And then, of course, beyond these points, a lot of these areas we're going to be looking at wintry precipitation, which we'll get into later. So compare the rest of the models here. That's what the 3 kilometer was looking like. That's what we just talked about here. Then this is the National Weather Service blend of models. Pretty congruent with the NAM 3 kilometer here. It looks like 2 to 3, maybe even a pocket of 4 inches is possible over the course of the next couple of days here with that current storm system, with that upcoming storm system, I should say. Then, of course, looking at the RDPS, which is a British model, a little bit more aggressive here, but then again, not improbable. A lot of these storm systems, severe weather events, have fluctuating totals, and really it could just depend on a particular storm right there. Not all storms will end up being severe that day, but some of them could be big rainmakers. We could have storms training over the same area, so this is very much a real possibility as well. And then, of course, we look at another British model, very aggressive, surprisingly. We'll have to see how that plays out. And then here's the Euro. I kind of agree with the Euro a bit here. Totals are a little bit aggressive as well, so I do think that there is a potentially higher ceiling than what's being shown here. National Weather Service blended model usually shows a happy medium between all the models that are shown on here. Canadian is actually a little less aggressive, which I find surprising considering its tendency to usually be more aggressive with precipitation. Then of course there's the GFS. GFS is kind of favoring a little bit more towards Mississippi than anywhere else, and then also of course towards, I would honestly say, a little further to the east of New Orleans and Baton Rouge here. So this is the Icon. We don't really get to look at this one much, so it's kind of cool to see that. We get about maybe 3 inches of rain, but this is a little further to the north than what I would be expecting. So like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this ultimately plays out. And then of course there's the NAM 12 kilometer here, pretty similar deal. So like I said, a lot of variance in between who's going to get the most precipitation here, but for the most part I'm thinking mainly along this corridor, just a little further to the north here, is where we're going to see some of the heaviest rain. That being said, let's go ahead and take a look at snowfall potential here. This is looking at the Cucchiera ratio. It's a very reliable ratio compared to other models. And of course, over towards the northeast, big time snow still expected here. Some places still could be seeing up to maybe a foot or more. It's questionable, but not improbable. We do have areas right now where, if I actually go back to the Storm Prediction Center and look at some meso discussions, you could actually see the you could actually see some areas potentially seeing up to 2-inch per hour snowfall bands. And here it is right here. So it's not like this can't be ruled out here. And you saw, and I mean, you got to see the precipitation look, and you know that there's still the potential for plenty more snow to be ongoing here throughout the evening and into the morning. So with the way things are set up, it's not like it can't happen, but I think it's a little aggressive too, though. Just kind of giving my own thoughts on this. But as a whole here, we could see Adirondack's getting slammed here. Towards the mid-Atlantic ranges of the Appalachians here, we could see potentially up to about 10 inches, maybe even more possible there. About a foot could be possible in a couple areas. Of course, with the next storm system, we have the Rockies getting slammed. Some significant snowfall over there, maybe up to 2 feet. And then maybe even more than that over towards the Sierras as well. So some very healthy doses of snow here towards the top of the mountain ranges. Some of this will get into the valleys, but for the most part, the mountain ranges are going to be the big winners here. Not to say that some of these valleys can't get up to about 3 to 6 inches in a lot of areas. Not going to be unlikely at all from the looks of it here. Further to the north here, especially towards South Dakota, towards Nebraska, especially towards Omaha, and then over towards western Kansas, we could get some pretty significant totals, up to about 6 inches of snow possible. And this is going to be a quick mover as far as these regions are concerned here. So it's really going to be a quick hit and run, which is typical of the nature of some of these systems here, but nonetheless here will cause a little bit of trouble with your road conditions there. Like I said, we'll get into the details of this tomorrow as well. We're just going to kind of hone in mostly on the severe weather threat, but we will talk about the wintry side. But this is just what the 3 kilometer is showing us. We show what the RAP is. This is an affiliate of the HRRR model. And we're seeing a lot of congruency between all of these. We're seeing mostly potentially up to about 20 inches of snow possibly in some areas, which is kind of crazy and a little bit alarming. So there could be some serious implications and impacts over here towards the northeast. Rockies are still looking like they're going to be doing the Rocky kind of thing and dropping pretty significant snow here. Not really a surprise there. British models in stark comparison to what it looked like on the rainfall over here towards the Gulf Coast, a little different here. Not quite as aggressive, and this is a new model run that came in too, which I find a bit surprising. But fact in the matter is, though, for the most part, it's actually favoring some increased snowfall over here towards the Midwest. Rockies are a little bit lighter on snow, but the fact in the matter is we already got plenty of snow here, and we're going to get a nice little dose of more. Then the new model here, the RRFSA. It's an experimental model or a semi-experimental model, but you can actually look on here and you can see that we're still seeing that same area of focus over here just south of just around Vermont and the New England region in particular, especially eastern New England. Then of course Rockies, here's the Midwest over here, a little bit lighter over here, but Rockies seem like the big winners for sure. And then of course the Sierras as well. Could see some ridiculous snowfall here, maybe even up to 3 feet or more, some areas even up to 4 feet. Look at the Euro, see a pretty similar deal here. We have our bullseyes pretty much in the same places, and pretty much the snowfall totals seem pretty congruent with a lot of the other model data that we've looked at so far. Even the Canadian seems to be in pretty good agreement so far, albeit the Midwestern setup's a little bit more aggressive. It's a little bit more aggressive with that. GFS, you actually see a secondary snow shield that extends a little bit further off to the south and east here, which could include parts of eastern Kansas here, may even include Kansas City here if it continues to trend in this direction. So as we continue to go forward here, HRRR is extremely aggressive. Snowfall a little bit more towards the interior starting out, and then eventually working its way off to the east here with some bigger totals, maybe even a little further south of the Adirondacks. So of course Rockies look about the same, as well as Sierras. And then there's a nice little snow snow shield here over towards east central Kansas that has to be mentioned as well, where we could see maybe about 2 to 3 inches and maximum maybe 5 inches possible. Here's the icon, looking pretty congruent. There's the NAM, of course, and then last but not least, Blender models. This one's separate because it uses a different ratio here, and the NWS Blender models a little less aggressive over here towards the Midwest, not surprising. Moderately aggressive over here towards the Northeast, not a huge surprise there either. Then towards the Rockies, we have still some pretty significant snow across the board. So no matter how you slice it up, or no matter you look at things truthfully, Midwest needs to be ready for some snow, maybe even blizzard conditions. Can't rule it out. With the amount of wind, blowing snow is definitely going to be a thing. And then over towards the Northeast, looking like we're going to see some pretty significant snow at the very least. This will definitely be a more notable snowstorm, to say the least. So, like I said, a lot going on, a lot more to come. Stay tuned. I know these videos have been long, and if you've been watching to the end, greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'm going to be around more. I'm going to do everything I can to beat off whatever this is that's been ailing me again. So, just bear with me. We'll be all right. But till tomorrow, hopefully. It's been time, Metalhead Weatherman. You guys take care and have a good rest of your evening. I might see you later tonight.